In the deep, dense woods of Nova Scotia, a perfect A-frame cabin stands empty, its windows reflecting a forest that was supposed to be a sanctuary, but became a source of terror. For Jasmine and Crystal, handing over the keys to this architectural masterpiece wasn't just a real estate transaction. It was a desperate bid for survival. This home was the culmination of years of dreaming, a physical manifestation of their desire to escape the noise of the modern world. But inside these beautiful walls, a quiet nightmare had been unfolding for 18 long months. The silence of the forest, once their greatest comfort, had transformed into a deafening amplifier for their deepest fears. They didn't leave because they wanted to. They left because staying had become an impossibility. And the reason for their departure wasn't structural failure or financial ruin. It was something far more invasive. But to understand why they walked away from paradise, we have to look at the darkness that found them first. Before the fear set in, there was only a desperate need for freedom. Jasmine and Crystal's journey began in the suffocating density of Toronto, a city where the pressure to perform left them burned out and yearning for escape. They traded the concrete skyline for a self-built Mercedes Sprinter van, embracing a nomadic existence that millions watched online with envy. But van life was merely a stepping stone. They craved permanence, a place to plant roots deep enough to weather any storm. When they found the 15 acres of raw land in Nova Scotia, it felt like destiny. It was remote, rugged, and seemingly untouchable by the chaos they had left behind. They believed they had finally found the one thing money couldn't buy: peace. They were ready to build a life on their own terms, far from the prying eyes of society. However, they failed to realize that in the digital age, true isolation is a myth that can be shattered in an instant. This was not a simple renovation. It was a resurrection fueled by sweat, blood, and unyielding determination. The A-frame they purchased was little more than a rotting shell on a crumbling foundation. For months, they documented the grueling reality of saving the structure. They didn't just write checks. They poured concrete, installed a complex 10,000-watt solar array, and drilled their own well. Every beam they sanded and every nail they drove created a deep emotional sunk cost that bound them to the property. This was their forever home, built with their own hands to sustain them for decades. The audience watched in awe as the ruin became a masterpiece, complete with a hand-built outdoor sauna. The pride they felt was palpable, a testament to what human will can achieve. But just as the paint dried and the dream felt secure, the very foundation of their safety began to crack. The turning point didn't come with a storm or a structural failure, but with a terrifying notification. Somewhere in the dark corners of the internet, the sanctuary was compromised. Their exact GPS coordinates, the digital address of their hidden haven, were leaked and published on public forums. This is the modern nightmare of the creator economy, the doxing of private lives. Suddenly, the 15 acres of buffer zone meant nothing. The vast distance from the nearest police station, which once signaled privacy, now signaled vulnerability. Strangers didn't just know who they were, they knew exactly where they slept. The invisible barrier between their online persona and their physical reality had been shattered, turning their remote location into a target. The screen had been breached, and for the first time, the forest didn't feel like it was protecting them. It felt like it was hiding those who were watching. For the next year and a half, the cabin became a beautiful cage. The psychological toll of living in a compromised location is difficult to overstate. In the city, a car slowing down outside your house is traffic. In the deep woods, it is a potential threat. Every twig that snapped in the distance, every engine hum on the remote road, triggered a spike of adrenaline. The transcript reveals a harrowing reality. Their peace was replaced by hypervigilance. They were living in a state of constant fight or flight, unable to relax in the very home built for relaxation. The joy of off-grid living evaporated, replaced by the crushing weight of anxiety. They were prisoners of their own visibility, waiting for a confrontation that felt inevitable. They tried to convince themselves it was manageable, until the realization hit that the danger wasn't just facing them. The calculation of risk shifted dramatically when they looked beyond themselves. It wasn't just Jasmine and Crystal in the line of fire. It was the innocent lives they were responsible for. Their dogs, Izzy and Bella, were oblivious to the threat, but entirely vulnerable to it. Visiting family members became a source of worry rather than joy. How could they invite loved ones to a place that felt like a target? The responsibility of protection weighed heavier than the desire for ownership. They realized that no amount of beautiful architecture or solar independence was worth the safety of the beings they loved. The sanctuary had become a liability, and the remote nature of the property meant that if something went wrong, help was simply too far away. The pressure was mounting, forcing them to confront a heartbreaking truth about the life they had built. Here lies the cruelest irony of their story. Jasmine and Crystal built their livelihood on authenticity, on sharing the raw and unfiltered reality of their lives with the world. Yet it was this very transparency that weaponized their existence. The details they shared to inspire others became the breadcrumbs that led to their displacement. The parasocial contract, the unwritten agreement between creator and viewer, had been violated. They were living the paradox of the modern influencer. To succeed, you must be seen, but to be safe, you must be hidden. They had successfully built a career that allowed them to live anywhere, only to find that their success made it unsafe to live where they wanted. The internet gave them everything, and then it took their home. Caught in this impossible trap, they had to make a decision that would break their hearts but save their minds. The decision to sell the A-frame was not made lightly. It was a choice of sanity over vanity. They weren't living because of financial hardship, the typical reason for selling a dream home. They were living to reclaim their mental health. They came to the profound conclusion that a perfect house is meaningless if you cannot sleep soundly within its walls. The constant background radiation of fear had eroded the joy of the lifestyle they championed. It was a victory for their well-being, but a defeat for their dreams. Admitting that they had to leave felt like letting the bad actors win, but staying would have been a far greater loss. They chose to prioritize their internal peace over their external achievements. But making the decision was one thing. Actually saying goodbye to the physical structure was a pain they weren't prepared for. The closing moments of their journey were filled with a heavy, suffocating silence.
As they packed the final boxes and prepared to hand over the keys, the weight of what they were losing crashed down. This wasn't just wood and glass, it was a chapter of their lives defined by hope and resilience. Leaving the Nova Scotia landscape meant leaving behind the version of themselves that believed they could have it all, the public career and the private sanctuary. The drive away from the property was a funeral for a dream. They were escaping the threat, yes, but they were also leaving behind pieces of their soul, embedded in the sauna, the well, and the forest floor. They drove away safe, but they left a warning behind for anyone watching who dreams of a public life in a private place. Jasmine and Crystal's story serves as a chilling cautionary tale for the digital age. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about the boundaries of privacy and the entitlement of the audience. They proved that you can build the most resilient, self-sufficient home in the world, capable of withstanding harsh winters and power outages, but it cannot withstand the gaze of the internet. They sacrificed their hard-won dream property for the fundamental human right to feel safe. As they move forward, searching for a new sense of home, their empty A-frame stands in the woods as a monument to the devastating price of internet fame. They reclaimed their lives, but the cost was their paradise.
And in the end, they learned the hardest lesson of all.
True luxury isn't a beautiful view. It's the ability to close your eyes and not be afraid.